We have two contestants for the Congress polls, and the last word on this election may not have been spoken yet. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. In moments from now, we'll be speaking to Shashi Tharoor, who was the first to declare his official candidature for the post of Congress president. Digvijay Singh, there in that photograph with him, is being described not as a rival but a friendly colleague. Shashi Tharoor, who was a member of the Group of 23, the group within the Congress that first asked for reform within the party, has triggered national interest in the fact that he has decided to contest. Many people describe him as elite, as too Stephanian, that's my old college there, as someone who's not grassroots. Is that the case? In the meantime, a third name of Mukul Wasnik is also doing the rounds. The Congress has had a spate of dramatic headlines after Ashok Gehlot decided to turn mutinous. Mr. Gehlot finally opted out of the race for the post of president, but the party remains split wide open in Rajasthan, where Sachin Pilot's future is unclear. This chaos in the Congress, can it lead to any clarity? We'll ask this of Shashi Tharoor, very much the man of the moment, the first Congress leader to have declared officially that he was going to run for the post of president. Let's go across now to Shashi, who's finally speaking to the media. Thus far, of course, Shashi, you've been quoting everybody from Theodore Roosevelt to Majru Sultanpuri, being very Shashi-esque in your literary references. Okay, let's start with the basics. What made you decide to throw your hat into the ring?
Well, look, I think, frankly, there was a need in the Congress party to see something happening. We've been going through some pretty rough years for the last few, and we've lost, I think, 39 of the last 45 elections in the country. We've also found ourselves in a position where large numbers, or at least significant numbers, of our colleagues were leaving us and going off to other parties. And there seemed to be essentially a concern that if business as usual continued, we'd never get anywhere. So since I was hearing all of this day after day after day, I decided to try and actually do something about it. And I thought that an election, which is something I've been calling for since 2014, an election would actually help both in terms of galvanizing the public's interest in the party, as well as energizing our own party members and workers. So that's the spirit in which I got into it.
Tell me this. I mean, you've heard this, that in a way, while your candidature has sparked a lot of media interest, a lot of commentary, suddenly the race seems to have legitimacy. There are those who will always bracket you as that deracinated elite face of the Congress, the one who doesn't have roots in the Hindi heartland, the heartland from which most of the AICC delegates come. Do you believe you have a chance at winning?
Well, first of all, I mean, that complaint is a bit unfair, considering that I'm one of those people who's won 3 Lok Sabha elections at a time when very few of my colleagues, including some who are leveling those criticisms, have been able to do so. So you can't be terribly deracinated and still win Lok Sabha elections, because you've got to go off and talk to people and persuade them that they can entrust their immediate future to you and that you can actually represent them meaningfully in the national parliament. So I think, in all fairness, without having to make too much of a case for myself, that's really an elite objection, because there is no elitism for somebody who gets elected, but somebody who can sit in the Rajya Sabha and never have to face an electorate doesn't consider themselves to be deracinated. They're willing to ascribe the label to others. I find that very troubling. So as far as I'm concerned, that's not a thing I take seriously. The Hindi heartland issue is a different matter. As you know, I do speak Hindi. I pop out of the Lok Sabha and give sound bites to Hindi channels on a daily basis when Parliament is in session. So it's not that I'm completely unconnected to the language, but the truth is, obviously, I'm not as fluent in Hindi as Mr. Modi is, or as I'd like to be, or as I am in English. The fact still is, nonetheless, that as far as our country is concerned, we are a multilingual country. And the notion that to be a man of the people, you can only speak Hindi in sort of a good rustic Bihari accent, but that you can't speak Malayalam and win elections and be considered a man of the people, I find that curiously troubling.
No, I mean, I'm not saying that the North-centric bias of our politics or the way we understand them is fair, but, I'll tell you, Pranab Mukherjee once told me when I was trying to provoke him into answering why he'd never been considered for prime ministership, his face turned all red and he said, it's because I can't speak Hindi. So, the fact is that this is one of the entrenched sort of biases in the way our politics is arranged. Do you believe it to be a disadvantage for you?
No, I mean, look, frankly, I think given half a chance, I'll be able to demonstrate that I speak and understand enough Hindi to understand the needs and aspirations of people and to communicate to them in a fairly simple way. Saral Hindi bolta hu main. But after that, I can certainly articulate their needs in the kind of voice that is heard effectively in Parliament or in the national discourse. Look, ultimately, we have great speakers in the country. Mr. Modi is one of them. His oratory is magnificent and unparalleled. But should we be judging him by the quality of his speeches or by how well he implements the things that he promises? I have to say to you, in all fairness, that if we are going to look at how people's lives have been impacted by politicians, the great speakers are not necessarily the most successful and most effective leaders of this country.
Yeah, I was talking to Manu Pillai, who of course is a great author, but who also worked with you closely for many years, and
Yeah.
he described you again. He made this point about the fact that it was very unfair to call you elite and deracinated, given your successive victories in Thiruvananthapuram or Trivandrum. But he also made this point that you were a person of your own mind. You sometimes deviated from the party line when you believed in it, and let's say engaging with Prime Minister Modi, he cited as one such example. And there's that photograph, I remember, I think we have it, there it is, when you did actually go to present a copy of your book to the Prime Minister. Now there are people in the Congress, but not Digvijay Singh, because I remember the Prime Minister attended, I think, one of his children's weddings, but there are people in the Congress who do not like this sort of engagement. And you've heard this criticism. How did you see Manu sort of Pillai's description of you as someone who could deviate from your own party when necessary?
No, look, I mean, it's more a question of style than of ideology or conviction. I'm totally sort of in sync with the set of beliefs and sort of value systems that the Congress stands for. And I think that if you look at my consistent performance on all major substantive issues, not only have I been a resolute critic of the BJP government, but I have been the lead speaker for the Congress, or one of the lead speakers for the Congress, on pretty much all the big issues that divide our party. So it's not that I've been someone who has, in some ways, sold out the party's convictions on anything that really mattered. But yes, on certain smaller things where I felt the government was actually doing something the Congress party would equally happily have done when we were in power, I have applauded the government for doing it, whether it was Swachh Bharat, sanitation is a priority that goes back to Mahatma Gandhi's era, whether it was International Yoga Day, whether it was something like hosting the World Sufi Conference or the World Buddhist Conference. And these are kinds of things that I praise the government for, because these were laudable initiatives. At bottom, we are Indians. We want India to do well. But that doesn't imply to me that in any way I have abandoned my party's core principles when it comes to things like our secular politics, when it comes to criticizing the majoritarian bigotry unleashed by people in power in our government today. When it comes to all of that, there is simply no doubt that I'm very much on the same page as the rest of my party.
How do you see Digvijay Singh as a challenger? We have that photograph of both of you today, which was very much a picture that has captured, some would say, a kind of bonhomie or a
Mhm.
camaraderie. But is it really like that? I mean, how do you see him as a
Yeah,
challenger?
he's been a good friend, a respected senior member of the party, and he's treated me very graciously as a good friend as well. So it was very kind of him that soon after he picked up his nomination forms, one of the first things he did was to call and say, "Can I come over?" And he did, and he called on me, and we were it was a very amicable conversation. I would say that someone like that, in any case, is somebody that the party has known and experienced for many years, and he's someone who I have had the highest respect for during his years before I came into politics as Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, and subsequently to my coming into politics, I've seen him at work in the party organization. He's a very, very fine human being. So when he and I are going to offer ourselves to the same electorate, this is not a battle between enemies, as I said in the tweet. It's really a friendly contest between colleagues who share the same broad vision of the party, but represent different backgrounds and, of course, different identities. And we're inviting our own colleagues to choose between us. Now, if there is Mukul as well, he's another signatory to the so-called G23 letter, a term which I must say I I think I blame on the media entirely because there was no formal organization as such. There were 23 people who happened to be available in Delhi during the COVID lockdown to sign a letter that others had drafted. Mukul signed, I signed. But the point is that the letter said things that largely are happening now. One of the things we called for was elections in the party. Now one is happening. One of the things that was called for was also elections to the working committee. Perhaps that'll follow. I think that we are looking at a situation where I don't think there's a whole lot of major difference between the kind of commitment to the party that any of the three of us has demonstrated, and at the same time the ideological principles we've stood for. Now, when it comes to the electorate, what they decide to choose is what their choice is based on depends on them. I certainly intend to reach out and get word out to the electorate, 9,100 PCC delegates around the country, through whatever means I can find. But it's not an easy task. We have been promised the lists of electors, but most of the lists don't have things like phone numbers or email addresses. It's not that we can very easily find a way of reaching out to all of them without a fairly intensive effort. Do my best, and I'm sure the others will as well.
Tell me this, there's a sense that in the end, the Gandhi family will continue to wield power no matter who is the next president. And of course, one thing is clear, unless there's something we don't know, this is the first time since 1997 that a non-Gandhi will lead the Congress. The last was Sitaram Kesri. But there's a sense that the Gandhi family with the real power would prefer a low-key candidate, that you are many things, but you are not low-key, you're too much
I'm
your
afraid
own.
not.
I'm glad you're honest about that. You're too much your own person. You have too much of your own personality. And therefore, the Gandhis would not want you. Even when you decided to declare that you were contesting, media suggested, and you can set the record straight, that you went to Sonia Gandhi and said, "Can I?" Now, if this is an open election, why did you need her consent or her green signal?
I didn't. I didn't need her consent. I went there certainly to see what her attitude was to the election. And indeed, there was a part of me that thought that perhaps she'd try and talk me out of it. She might say, listen, why do you want to contest? We've always done things by consensus in the party, or whatever. She never did. She was totally open and friendly to both me and, as I learned later, Digvijay. And she said to both of us, do contest. We are neutral in this race. We don't plan to have any official candidates. We want to stay above the fray, and you go ahead and let the party choose. I think that's an admirable attitude. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the spirit in which I've entered as well. Nobody is anti anyone else within the party. This is about how to strengthen the party and how to make the party better. And frankly, that's something which we're really looking forward.
Why did you think
Hmm?
Mrs. Gandhi would try and talk you out of it initially?
Because indeed there haven't been contested elections for a very long time. And the last one was against her. So it may well be that I thought that she would ask us to uphold the traditions of the party, in which case I think many of us would have felt that we don't want to necessarily buck the party organization, even if we felt there were issues of discontent with the way in which the party was run that we wanted to bring to the fore. But no one, I think, in the party has any sense of anything but the greatest respect and affection for Mrs. Gandhi, and I don't think anyone would have wanted to go against her wishes. But as I said, that's not the message I got from her. I got the message of please go ahead and we'll stay and we'll stay out of it ourselves. And then she said the same thing to Digvijay. I might add that I've had the same conversation subsequently with both Priyanka Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, and they've all echoed the same line. They believe the party will only benefit from a contested election, which will do a lot to actually enhance the legitimacy and credibility of the party in the eyes of the Indian public. Already the amount of interest, including from you folks in the media, in the Congress party because of the election has been quite remarkable. And I think as a result, it's above all, it's pointed out to the entire country that there is no other party that has an open process like this to elect its leader. None of the other parties has ever had it. At least the Congress has sometimes had it. And we're going to have another one this time. And that's something which I believe, as happened with the British Conservatives, will rivet the attention of the public as well. It's an internal process, an election like this, but there's no question that it's also something which will capture the imagination of the general public. We need to win votes, Barkha. For two successive general elections, we've been stuck at a ceiling of 19%. We need something that's going to actually open up the interest of the overall public in all of us. And very clearly, it seems to me that this election is likely to give us a tremendous new audience amongst people who say, wow, the Congress could do this. They've talked about their differences. They've actually had an exchange, and they've now come out with a result. And now this person has the legitimacy that comes from being elected by everyone. Why don't we try and move ahead in this way? I think that's not a bad.
There's one problem. There's one problem with this formulation, and
Sure.
that is that the power is not really pivoting away from the Gandhis to whichever one of you wins the next election, right? The power, the face of the party, it seems, continues to be Rahul Gandhi, and therefore in 2024, it's not that whoever wins this election in these elections that have generated a lot of interest will be the face of the party. Isn't there a problem there?
Well, it's not necessarily as simple as that. I think the Gandhis have clearly given a lot of us the impression that they genuinely wish to step back. Frankly, if they wanted to just retain power in the party, they didn't need to go through an entire exercise of conducting an election. If Rahul Gandhi had simply withdrawn his letter of resignation to the working committee, he would automatically have continued as president. He was elected for a 5-year term in 2017. No one was going to challenge that. Indeed, the committee would have unanimously welcomed it if he had simply done that. He chose not to. He didn't want the job. And if that's the way the Gandhis feel strongly about this, then surely a president who's elected in a process from which they have excluded themselves will have a certain amount of power and authority of his own, or I could have said her own, but all the three names you talked about are men. That person would have a certain legitimacy and power of his own, which I think will constitute, if you like, the authority with which to deal with the party. Now, I'm not in any way criticizing the Gandhi family. I think that they are somebody, as a family, their DNA is inextricably tied up with the DNA of the Congress party. And very clearly, we're going to need a very active sort of Gandhi family involvement, blessing, whatever word you want, even there being sort of the moral conscience of the party because of the enormous public respect that they command and the respect they command amongst the party workers. So we're talking about a hugely important relationship, which not only will I think they not want to lose, but the Congress party would be foolish to discard or to put aside.
But in real terms, what does it mean? What does it mean? Moral conscience?
Well,
I don't know what it means.
No,
Are you saying it is your
something like
impression?
Rahul Gandhi continuing to march on the Bharat Jodo Yatra while a new president assumes office? I mean, the fact is, he has undertaken a march for 150 days. The election of the new president is 20 days away, right? So very clearly, you're going to see a situation where a new president will be coming to office, and Rahul Gandhi will continue to be marching across India or up and down, up the sort of length of India, without having had a chance in some ways to seek power for himself. I think that means that he, in a sense, he's playing the kind of role of a Jayaprakash Narayan in the Congress party. I don't know. You tell me what your analogy would be.
I guess my question is this, that, Rahul Gandhi as JP, what JP was ironically to Indira Gandhi, whose emergency you have criticized before you joined the Congress. Many ironies there in that reference you just invoked. My question is this: will the next Congress president, whoever he is, work under the Gandhi family, or are the Gandhi family kind of not in the, if this were a company, not in the sort of workflow chart of the company?
Well, that depends rather on them and, of course, on the new president. A modus vivendi would have to be worked out. I mean, very often the analogy that people come up with is what happened when the Tatars decided to withdraw themselves. from the chairmanship and the CEO role of their own company. I mean, everyone knew the Tatas bore the name of the Tatas, and the Tatas had a tremendous authority. But for a couple of years, Mr. Ratan Tata stepped back and essentially allowed Mr. Mistri's head. And as we know, a couple of years later, he basically turned around and said,
I
"Sorry,
mean,
I
the
want to
problem
go."
with this analogy. You know the problem with this analogy,
Yeah, it
Shashi, that
didn't
if
end well
Rahul,
for Mr. Mistry.
yeah, if Rahul Gandhi is the Ratan Tata stepping back and Shashi Tharoor is the Cyrus Mistry, then and not counting, of course, the tragic
I'll wear
accident, sticking just
seatbelts.
to metaphor, Ratan Tata comes back and takes control of the party. So basically, what you're saying is that the Gandhis aren't going to give up control of the party.
No, I'm just saying that it's an analogy that others have often been using in conversations. And I have to
Yeah.
admit that if, for example, the Gandhis wish to assert themselves in this way, they would find a strong amount of support from many, many Congress workers. So there's no question that they are a very influential and important part of the Congress party. So that's why I said it depends partly on them. If they wish genuinely to step back and have a quieter life for a while, and Rahul, as I say, continues doing things like the Bharat Jodo Yatra, which has a phenomenal impact on the people. You should have seen the oceans of public who turned up to applaud him and support him, and the huge amount of adulation that he's getting and the Congress is getting for this march. You would understand the value of that. Now, it's arguable that no full-time president could spend his whole day marching up and down the country. And therefore, it's good to have another figure who's willing to do that, who has the physical fitness to do it and the inclination to do it. So it could actually be very, very good cooperative exercise. But
Is
who
the next
exercises
Congress
authority over
president?
what will
Yeah.
have to be seen in practice. I think that this is an extraordinarily interesting initiative by the party to have such elections. And the fact that people like Digvijay and me have come forward is an indication that we are willing to take the leadership of the party at its word when it says the elections are going to be free and fair, and there will be no so-called official candidate getting the benefit of high command support. If that turns out not to be the case in practice, we can talk again later. But for now, I believe that this is going to be conducted in good faith, and I would like to support the party leadership in their effort to hold a free and fair election.
Is the next Congress president going to be a la JP Nadda in the BJP, where the real fount of power lies elsewhere, and the prime ministerial face is quite clearly Mr. Modi? Or do you believe that there's a genuine shift when you say that the Gandhis have given you all the impression that they want to step back? Do you mean step back from running of the party, or do you mean step back from the key decision making? Because they're two very different things.
I agree. And here is a question to which there is no answer until it works out in practice. A lot will depend on the identity of the victor of the election and his equation with the Gandhi family. It will also depend on what the Gandhi family wants for themselves and how they want to engage with the party. I don't think that any of the three of us would want the Gandhi family to step back completely from interest in and involvement in the affairs of the party. But I'm sure that we will be guided by them as to how they feel they can play a most useful role. Nonetheless, if you're elected to a job like the president of a national party, you have a responsibility to fulfill, not least to the 9,000 odd people whose choices put you there. So at the end of the day, there is, after all, a larger sense of responsibility from which comes your legitimacy and which comes your authority. So if that authority is challenged by anybody, you as the president have to figure out how to exercise it, how to respond to it. I mean, there is a famous example of how both Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in 1939 and Purushottam Das Tandon in 1951, I think it was,
Yeah.
actually resigned when the party leader, in one case Mahatma Gandhi, in another case Jawaharlal Nehru, was uncomfortable with their role as elected presidents of the party. Now, that's one possible outcome. Who knows? But I think a self-respecting president would essentially want to be exercising his own authority, especially if he's won it through a hard-fought election.
When I hear you say this, a self-respecting president would want to exercise his own authority. People would listen to this and say, Shashi, this is exactly the reason the Gandhis will ensure you never win. What would you say to them?
Possibly, I'd say possibly. I mean, I know I've looked. You're not the only person to make these comments. I'm surrounded by cynics every day in our political space, and I've been hearing this a lot. I'm not entering this race out of total naivety. I am entering the race out of a commitment to the party and out of a belief that I actually can help make a difference. I mean, why I got into this was after literally dozens of people, over 100 calls came into me from people across the party, including many who surprised me by calling and many whom I didn't really know very well before, urging me to contest. And the most common argument that most of them made, Barkha, was that I have the capacity, they said, they felt, to appeal beyond the traditional Congress electorate, which is something the Congress needs. If we're going to rise above that 19% that we've had in 2014 and 19, we need to be able to attract people who maybe at one point voted for us, but who've drifted away from us in the last couple of elections. Business as usual will not get us any additional votes. So the reason they exhorted me to put myself forward was because they saw me as somebody who would appeal to the kind of people who have not traditionally voted for the Congress. Now, a lot of the Congress hardcore may actually deplore precisely that quality in me. There may be a lot of people saying, you're insufficiently sort of, consistently negative on the BJP and so on as we are. But unfortunately, we can't win elections across the country with only the support of the Congress true believers. We need other people as well. We need the uncommitted, the non-political minded, the non-Congress friendly, who will have to rise up and actually come and
Okay.
vote for us. And this is
Okay.
something which, in my mind, which would require us to be able to appeal to that section of the electorate that hasn't been with us. If that's something I can contribute to the party, I'll consider it a signal service I can make to the party.
Let me just ask you this. You just made a comment. You said business as usual is not going to get us more votes. And I agree. I also agree with, in a way, the feedback that you've got, that you are a persona that does cross the traditional Congress electorate. It's a point I've actually made often, that there's some appeal you have even among those I've met who are BJP voters. But here's the question. The last week, in many ways, has been business as usual. It is Sonia Gandhi, the epicenter of sort of all power and decision making within the Congress, who has had to hold this party together as the pieces fall, as they did in Rajasthan. Right? You talk about this media interest in the party elections. The saturation media coverage has partly been because of the free fall in Rajasthan and what happened with Mr. Gehlot. How do you see those developments?
Look, that was an unfortunate situation. I think we'd all agree. It's difficult for me to comment in any depth on a situation in which I was not directly involved. And since Mrs. Gandhi is the Congress president, it was indeed her responsibility to pull this together. If tomorrow somebody else is the Congress president, that person would have to do the same job. Now, in this particular instance, what went on behind the scenes, what was said behind closed doors, what promises were made by some that were not kept by others, whatever it may have been, without knowing that, you can't, I think, really speak authoritatively from within the party. All I can say is Mrs. Gandhi is handling it. She's been dealing with it. And one has to have the faith and the respect for her to assume that what she's doing is the right thing for the party. But on the whole, media coverage has been by and large unkind to the party. But on the election in the party so far, it's been a net plus. It has shown the party to be the one democratic party in India. It has manifested genuine interest and curiosity in the uncertainty of the process and the outcome. And it's kept members of the public fairly
Isn't there
riveted
isn't
to
there a
what's
thin
happening to our
line
party.
between? Yeah, well, everyone in India, everyone loves a good political drama. I'm not sure that is scoring or sort of showing off the democratic credentials of the party. Like, aren't you conflating apples and oranges here with a complete free fall in Rajasthan with inner party democracy? But be that as it may, the more important question is there a generational clash within the party? A guest on one of our shows today, Shruti Kapila, the historian at Cambridge University, whom you also know, she made the point today that she said whatever happens next, it's the end of the Indira era of the Congress, and this is now Rahul Gandhi's Congress. Do you see it like that? Do you see, in a way, I don't know that I see that. I still see the power play centered around the old players like Ashok Gehlot, Digvijay Singh, Sonia Gandhi. I'm not sure I'm seeing this generational shift. Are you seeing it?
No, I think it's difficult to just apply a simple label like that. As you rightly said, a lot of this is still playing itself out. And, there was a time when people like Ashok Gehlot and Digvijay Singh were amongst the young, successful firebrands of the party there. I think each became chief minister in their 40s. So now they've become sort of venerable senior figures in the party, but they represent a legacy when the Congress was young and thriving in the aftermath of the Indira Gandhi era, that is Rajiv Gandhi and later. And their political careers, by and large, were very distinguished ones. Now, Rahul Gandhi, I know, has had to carry the burden of being somebody whose political innings has been marked by more setbacks than successes, and therefore there is this perception that you're applying a label that almost implies some sort of label of failure. I think that we are engaged currently in an exercise to cast off that label. And if the election produces an outcome that is actually of appeal to the public, then we will actually be able to cast off that label, because ultimately the party, the public, the voters wake up and say, hey, this is a new Congress, or that's going to give us a newer India than the new India Mr. Modi boasts about. Let's take an interest in them. Let's give them a chance. And that's what I think we need to see happening in 2024.
Okay, the very last question. You know, a lot of your literary allusions on Twitter and so on have positioned yourself as the sort of the man in the arena, quite literally, the sort of lone figure who took the risk. And I think Manu Pillai, your former aide, also sort of endorsed that you will walk that last mile. You're not going to back out of this fight, are you? Even if it feels to you like you don't have a chance at winning.
No, I'm the boy who stood on the burning deck. I think if it comes to that, I'll go down with the ship. But the truth is that Barkha, if you have the courage of your own convictions, if you feel strongly enough about something, you've got to stick your neck out for it. And I put that neck on the line. Look, at the end of the day, I have had friends warning me that I'm going to destroy myself in the party. People have warning me that it'll be considered an act of lèse-majesté and that I would end up being punished. I've had people telling me, you're destroying your political career. Why do you want to do this? Just sit back. But I said, the point is that doing nothing, to my mind, is not an option when there is such a widespread perception of crisis. If you can't do something about the crisis, then stop complaining about it. And
if you were to win, fair enough, if you were to win, what's the one thing you would try and change immediately in the Congress party?
I think the way the Congress works, internally, I think we need a fairly serious level of decentralization. When my nomination papers have been submitted, I intend to issue a sort of manifesto to the Congress party colleagues who are the electorate. And one of my major themes is how to empower the lower levels of the party and get away from the situation where everything requires a decision in Delhi from the High Command. I think we need to now move into a different kind of approach. It's not that anything involves changing the constitution of the party or anything. It's merely the way in which we've interpreted the existing structures and authorities that could be improved.
When you're talking about changing how the Congress works internally, Digvijay Singh said, whoever becomes the next president will work under the Gandhis. I noticed that you said that the power structure still has to be worked out. If you become the president, do you believe you'll be reporting to the Gandhis, or do you believe that their own role is not clear yet?
Their own role is not clear yet, Barkha. In any case, there is no provision in the constitution of the party for the president of the party to report to anyone else. The fact still remains, when you have a prime minister, as the BJP does today, or as we did when Dr. Manmohan Singh was prime minister, that is one center of power, and then the head of the party is another center. The center, whether it's Mr. Nadda in the BJP, there's a clear hierarchy there. Whether it was Mrs. Gandhi in the Congress party, where the hierarchy went the other way. But when we are not in power, when we are in opposition, I find it very difficult to understand how you could have a situation where you have someone above the president of the party who is not prime minister of the country or anything else. So I think this will have to perhaps to be negotiated, because again, as I said, I'm not going in with as a babe in the woods on this one. I understand there's a history. I understand where your question is coming from, but this has to be seen.
But you do realize that this thing you've just said, which is on the screen, no provision for the Congress president to report to anyone as such, unless there was, of course, as you pointed out, a prime minister, like there was with a Manmohan Singh or a Sonia Gandhi, and you had two power centers. You are effectively saying that you believe the Congress president, whoever he is going to be, is a fully autonomous post that should not be reporting to the Gandhis or anyone else.
Look, as I've told you, Barkha, I'm very conscious of Congress party history. And I do realize that there have been occasions back in when Netaji Bose stepped down because the majority of the working committee was supporting Mahatma Gandhi against him. He was the elected president, but he ended up losing. He ended up stepping down. Or similarly, when Purushottam Das Tandon, who was the elected president of the party, stepped down because he'd crossed Prime Minister Nehru. So there are histories in the past where a president was not able to get his own way, but in both cases, they chose to resign rather than to work under the authority of someone who had not been elected to the position they were holding. So there are precedents. One will have to wait and see. But I think, Barkha, for anyone to seek an office in the party and then to imagine the worst immediately is a bit silly. I mean,
No, I'm just listening to you and thinking that these formulations, most Congress watchers would say for Shashi Tharoor just saying this, he's never going to win. Just for saying that, why should the Congress president report to someone else? He's not going to win because look at Mukul
look,
Wasnik, totally under the radar. Look at Digvijay Singh, who's not under the radar, but who's made it very clear that he will report to the Gandhis. You're the one person who hasn't said that, and just for that, you're not going to win. That's what most people would tell you.
Barkha, you may well be right, and we'll so be it if that happens, right? I mean, if you see with me, you get what you see. I mean, what you see is what you get. And I am somebody with principles and convictions. I've always had them. They precede my entry into politics or my joining the Congress. My books have been in existence for 41 years. My paper trail is long. I have something to live up to for myself, which for me is not negotiable. And I think my convictions are what they are. I'm very proud to have brought those convictions to the Congress. And being in the Congress hasn't changed those convictions. If tomorrow my convictions are not welcome in the Congress, I have to learn to accept that, right? That's the reality. At the moment, I'm turning to the voters in my party and saying, hey guys, this is what I offer. Do you want it? If you want it, I'm available. And if they say, no thanks, we'd rather have somebody else who may play a very different role in the party to the kind of role you would play, I say fine, because the party gets the leadership it deserves. But all I'm trying to say is I will not, die lamenting that I didn't try. I will try. I will try and put forward the best proposition I can for myself and for my party. And if that doesn't work, Barkha, so be it.
Okay, good luck, Shashi. Thank you so much. I like the spirit with which you're approaching this election. It's also refreshing to hear somebody actually sort of just speak their mind and not speak in a mass-produced sort of articulation of a party. So we wish you the best. I think certainly your entry has raised a lot of interest in this election. So good luck, and as they say, may the best man win. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Barkha. It was good talking to you. And as I say, with me, you'll always get somebody speaking his own mind. Good talking to you.
Thank
Take care.
you. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.